I bought an HP Z200 at auction with 4 other PCs for $5. After installing Windows 10, you can see there's a PCI serial port that's an unknown piece of hardware. In order to combat this, I installed the HP Softpak Manager to download all of the HP drivers and software for this. Since it's going to be a home office PC, the HP software can help me manage and update it. The system's not supported by HP for Windows 10, so I have to manually select the computer from the list on the left and manually download the drivers. Selecting the drivers to download went fine, and everything got saved to the computer successfully. In my experience, I have to manually install IMEI updates and BIOS updates because the Softpak Manager says they work when they really don't. And to take care of the missing serial port, I'm going to have to go ahead and install the IMEI updates. Here you can see I've started the installation. I've matched the Softpak numbers just to make sure I run the right Softpak. And then as I go through the installation, there's not going to be any errors or anything. This is going to go completely fine. There's not going to be any issues that you can see, no errors, anything like that. It's going to take a moment to finish, but once it's done, I will jump into Device Manager. Give it just a minute. It's getting closer. It just takes a moment. Okay, so now the installation is finished, and we're going to jump into Device Manager really quick. And the COM3 is now actually a known piece of hardware for the Intel Active Management technology, and this is where everything goes horribly wrong. Now that the computer's starting back up, you can see that the management platform is in manufacturing mode. What I noticed is that every so often my computer would just shut off while I was in the middle of using it. And some research, you can see I posted a couple Google search results up here, that in as recent as June 2019, people are having this problem with the computer shutting off every 30 minutes. And what I realized is that nothing I did would allow me to update the BIOS or the IMEI. So here you can see trying to flash it from inside the BIOS just leads to a generic error. Restarting the computer, again, I'm now in a FreeDOS prompt, and I've downloaded the FlashBin program from HP trying to flash it in DOS, and the process will continue. It'll act like it's going normally just for a couple of seconds, and then it'll tell me that the current image is corrupted. So here you can see as it goes to verify, it never counts any percentage. It's just going to crash out that the system ROM was corrupt. Restarting again, I'm going to boot up into Windows, and I'm going to try the Windows utility. And the BIOS isn't set up yet, so I have to manually select my boot device here temporarily until I get things working. But again, it doesn't matter what I do. This is the first time in 20 years I've had a BIOS fail. The last time I had a BIOS flash fail or an IMEI update fail was a long, long time ago. And that was when I could just disconnect the socket, pull the chip out of a socket, there you go, and just reinsert it. So I blanked out the login there. Like I said, this is part of a domain, and so I was just blocking the domain credentials there for just a second. But now I'm in the BIOS update for Windows. We're going to try this again in Windows, and here after a few minutes, this takes a very long time. So I've sped up the footage here, several 100%, but it's going to go through really quick, and it'll try and flash the BIOS directly 3 different times, and it'll fail, so then it'll try and recover the BIOS, and then it's going to pop up a message that I need to stop messing with the BIOS and contact HP. So we're going to let this run through just for a second so that you can see it. Right there in the middle of the screen, you can see which attempt that it's on, and then Okay, so there the BIOS flash failed. So again, it didn't matter if I was in the BIOS, in DOS, or in Windows. It was not possible to flash the BIOS. And as you saw earlier, all I did was flash the IMEI. What I figured out is that the HP BIOS has some IMEI information on the end of it. And even though I already had the latest BIOS on this computer, flashing the IMEI still didn't work because it was production mode firmware, and that corrupted my BIOS completely. So I went ahead and bought a new motherboard, and I'm actually forced to replace the motherboard to get this computer back up and working. I think I spent $20 on eBay on this motherboard. So one of the things in this boot that you're going to see, we actually get the IMEI BIOS screen here. We weren't getting that before the motherboard swap, so the IMEI was completely corrupt from that last software update being a pre-production flash. And here you can see now on this boot that there is no error anymore for being in pre-production mode. So I just thought I would share that it looks like HP has some invalid software on their website, and if you flash an HP Z200 to the latest BIOS and firmware for the management engine, it'll actually not work for you. Now that the computer is working, I thought I'd share the system specifications. The processor's an Intel Xeon X3470. That's 4 cores and 8 threads at 2.93 gigahertz. I haven't pushed the CPU, but Intel says it can boost up to 3.6 gigahertz. I have 8 gigs of RAM shown in this photo, but since the system is working, I have gone back to 16 gigabytes of RAM. I installed a 540 gigabyte Western Digital solid state drive to be the boot drive and the primary application drive. There's a 1 terabyte storage drive. It's either Seagate or Western Digital, but in this case it's not necessary. Most of the storage is on the network. I just had the drive from the original build, so I thought I'd leave it in there as a backup. The system has dual Quadro 600s. While the cards can't be used in SLI, this workstation has 2 monitors that have DisplayPort, and by putting that extra Quadro 600 that we had laying around, I was able to use the DisplayPort without any adapters. And then there's a red card and an orange card near the bottom. Those are FireWire and USB cards. Now, the power supply in this system is proprietary, so I have an adapter on order. I tried to make one, but it didn't work. And so I want to see if this pre-manufactured adapter will work, but I want to try and put in a better PSU. I already have on order a USB 3 card since this doesn't have USB 3 built into the motherboard. It does have a strange header that's labeled USB 3, but I can't find anything to connect to it. And finally, I'd like to add better graphics.